Hi, and welcome to our HAPTICORE Customer Test App First Steps Guide. In this video, we will introduce you to the interface of our software solution, helping you to easily generate your own haptic feedback patterns for your haptic encoders. Therefore, we show you how the app is organized, how to connect your HAPTICORE encoder or HAPTICORE Eval Kit, and how to import, customize, and save haptic feedback patterns. This video is part of a series about our HAPTICORE software solutions, so make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any announcements and news, and leave us a like if you found this video useful. But for now, let's get started on our first steps guide to the HAPTICORE Customer Test App. You can find all of our software solutions in our download section. If you haven't downloaded the files yet, check out the video description where we put the link to our download center. After downloading the software and before connecting the device for the first time, make sure that the correct driver is installed and that you have updated the firmware. You will find more information on how to do this in the documentation, which you also find in the downloaded folder. Once you're done, we are ready to start. First, let's open the Customer Test App. You should now see this user interface on your screen as well. Don't worry, the parameters are quite complex at first glance, but we will explain which functions are relevant step by step in this and other videos. Now we connect our HAPTICORE via USB to the computer and select the appropriate COM port here in the top left corner. Usually this is the one with the highest number. If the HAPTICORE does not appear yet, just click the refresh button. In our case, everything looks good and we click Connect. As soon as your HAPTICORE is connected, you will find the reports, or in other words, the live data of your HAPTICORE in the middle of the screen. Here you can see, for example, the total encoder angle, which is the absolute position including all revolutions at which the HAPTICORE is currently positioned. In our case, it's minus 2656 degrees. Below this, you see the encoder angle. In contrast to the total encoder angle, this value resets after each full rotation and therefore ranges from 0 to 359.99 degrees. Next, the encoder rotation speed per second, the rotation counter, the tick index, which is the counter of the triggered ticks. You can also see this when we move our connected encoder, the push-pull value and push-pull state, which however are irrelevant in our case since we are using a HAPTICORE which does not provide a push function, the current encoder temperature, and the current flowing through the coil of the encoder. As you can see, these values change as soon as we start to move the encoder. The device status tells us if there is any problem. In our case, however, everything is fine and the test app displays no error. Also important is the calibration status. Here we see that our encoder is not calibrated yet. This shouldn't be a problem with your device, as our encoders are usually already calibrated when you receive them. However, in case something went wrong with the calibration, we show you how to calibrate your HAPTICORE encoder yourself in another video. You can find the link in the video description. Finally, the connection stage shows us once again that the customer test app, control unit, and the HAPTICORE encoder are all properly connected. Up here, you find different setting options for the reports. For the moment, however, the preset settings are enough for us. At the top right corner, you will find the general commands. With Reload Device Settings, all fields are updated again. Load Device Default Settings activates the default settings that are transmitted from the device, and Reboot Device resets the encoder itself. Right below, the Customer Test app shows us the HAPTICORE information, which means the name, serial number, and version information that tells you, but especially the HAPTICORE support team, in case of difficulties, which device you are just connected to. Besides the hardware information, we also get information about the firmware. In our case, we are using version 3.76 with the communication version 3.10 and the library version 3.79. Below, the controller ID, meaning information about the HAPTICORE control unit we are using, in our case, the CRM USB 3, and last but not least, the operation time, meaning how long our control unit has been active. But let's move on from the info sections to the areas that are relevant for you to create your own haptic feedback patterns. We start with an overview of the available modes. In this section, you find all functions to import edit, save, and export your haptic feedback patterns. We'll start by importing our first collection of haptic feedback modes that are also used in our HAPTICORE Experience software, our test application to experience our fully programmable haptics in a more guided environment. To do so, simply click Import from File and select the Experience Software's HCM file for your encoder from the previously downloaded folder from the Download Center. As soon as you click Open, the overview window fills up and you have access to the various predefined haptic modes for the HAPTICORE encoder, for example, softics. If we click on the play icon, the selected mode will turn green and the haptic feedback for the HAPTICORE encoder will be activated. You can also see this in the lower area, where the different parameters of the mode change only with a click of a button. If we now change the mode and activate, for instance, the medium ticks, the parameters will be overwritten and the haptic feedback of your encoder will change. The green color shows us at this point that the mode is activated. However, as soon as we edit the parameters, let's change the tick angle, for example, the color changes to gray, indicating that the selected mode has been modified. If we now click on the Save button, we save all parameters, in our case the modified tick angle, and overwrite the imported mode. So if we switch to another mode and then back to the medium tick, you will notice that the modified parameters are still set. Of course, we can also delete modes from our overview by clicking the Trash button. However, as we don't want to overwrite our modes all the time, we can also add new haptic modes to our list. For example, we now modify the soft tick again and change the tick angle a little bit, and now click Add New Haptic Mode with Active Settings. Next, you can come up with a creative name for your mode, let's say My Tick Mode, which I can now save and add to the list. If the title doesn't fit anymore, simply double-click on the mode to change it. Quite similar to saving modes, exporting the whole collection functions as well. So we can use Export to File to overwrite the previous HMC file, or we create a completely new file that we can save in a folder, for example, to share it. Of course, we can also reload our newly created file later through the import function for further modifications. Let's take a look at the lowest section now, which we already briefly looked at while creating and saving new modes. Here you can find all the parameters that make up the haptic feedback. Think of haptic modes as a toolbox. Each mode contains individual parts or building blocks that we can activate and deactivate in this area, such as ticks, a barrier, and so on. Besides adding and removing these functions, you can also customize them in detail, no matter whether you want to change ticks, the barrier, the current, or any other part of your haptic mode. We will go into detail about the individual components of this toolbox in separate videos. Now you know where to find the most important areas and functions of the customer test app. Finally, however, we will introduce you to a few useful additional functions here at the left side. You won't need all of them for your start, but we would like to point out the idle mode and the set encoder angle function. The idle mode is kind of an energy-saving mode, in which you can set that the HAPTICORE encoder is not permanently powered. This means that you can define that after falling below a defined speed and time, there is no more current applied to the core. As soon as you move the haptic core again, this mode will be dissolved and the haptic feedback will be activated again. For example, the current settings of 10 degrees and 2 seconds mean that if the speed drops below 10 degrees per second for longer than 2 seconds, the current is not abruptly deactivated but reduced by a certain factor. In addition, the set encoder angle function can be useful as it changes the angle of the haptic core. As we discussed previously, our connected encoder has been rotated back several times and therefore displays a total encoder angle of a bit more than minus 3100 degrees. We can now set this to 0 or any other value using the set encoder angle function, which can be useful when we are working with barriers, for example. So now you are familiar with the basic functions of the customer test app. In the next videos, we will go into detail about the various haptic feedback functions, such as ticks, barriers, and so on. This way, you can create your own haptic feedback patterns step by step. So check out our channel for our other video tutorials. But before you do so, you might want to try out the import, save, and export process again, so that you don't accidentally delete a custom mode later on. If you have any questions about our software solutions or our HAPTICORE products and eval kits, please get in touch with us. Our support team will be happy to assist you. Otherwise, leave us a like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any announcements and new videos. Have fun trying out our HAPTICORE technology and see you in the next video.